Hey guys, welcome back to Random Sidecast. I am so excited to talk about some new developments happening in the world of Horizon, some new news, some stuff that'll be already out by the time this video hits. But we have a great guest to talk about it today. I couldn't be happier for this person's success on the platform, really being the steward of the Horizon Creators Guild. We can get into that a little bit. Super excited to have Arktix on the program. Thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Hey guys, thanks RSQ. Appreciate you having me. Really happy that you reached out to do this. Like we were mentioning before in the bloopers that people will maybe see at the end of this.
No. This was the first take.
Right, yeah. We haven't been having technical difficulties at all. No. But I've actually been following your channel for a long time before I even started mine. So this is really cool to be collabing with you and working together and doing a podcast together.
Yeah, well, it's my absolute pleasure. And we were talking a little bit about this because you're coming up on, I think, your 2-year anniversary, I think. You said, and you've just been doing such amazing work. And that's the thing, right? You've been putting in the work. In my opinion, there are no such things as overnight successes. So much goes into it behind the scenes to make this stuff happen. And as far as your creator journey is concerned, you talked about wanting to create content for a while. What gave you that final push? Because everybody has that point where they think about it to actually doing it.
Yeah, I think it was really kind of seeing that Forbidden West was going to come out soon. I kind of saw that announcement. We had the initial release date at the end of 2021, it was originally, I guess, and then it got pushed a little bit into 2022. And so I had wanted to get into content creation for a while. You know, there's a number of streamers and YouTubers that I admire, and just always wanted to kind of do something that I really built from the ground up. That was like my own business or product or whatever brand. So I kind of saw that as an opportunity. I always wanted to get into content creation, and I was like, I'm going to jump on it when Forbidden West comes out. You know, as a brand new content creator, you're not going to get early access or anything, but I was just like, maybe I can kind of start a following if I start some Zero Dawn content for people that are like really hardcore and playing it still right now, and then kind of just step into Forbidden West when it came out, and it started to do pretty well. So it was exciting to kind of lay that plan out and then execute, and here I am now.
Well, I got to tell you, I could have really used some Arktix in my life when Forbidden West came out, because I was lucky enough to get early access. But the catch to that is when you're having a hard time, nothing exists yet as far as like guides and things like that. And that was my first, you do it so often. You're like, oh, I got to look up how to do this. And of course you're like, I'm sitting there like, oh no, I'm truly and utterly alone in trying to figure out like this puzzle or this thing. So I'm sure next time, you know, the good folks at Gorilla are going to see all the work that you're doing, and you're going to get a jump start on that thing. So
that would be really
don't be surprised if I hit you up when I am struggling with my incredibly pedestrian play style of both games. But you said that you dove in, and I think this is really cool. The first time, even before Forbidden West came out, you actually went back as a touchstone to Zero Dawn and started making kind of your videos specifically outlining how to hunt each individual machine, which I thought was really awesome. As far as, because you touched on it in one of your videos, you were saying that for all the strengths that the Horizon franchise has, especially for Zero Dawn, they don't do the best job of explaining really how to go about hunting the machines in the best way.
Yeah.
So when you were creating that first series focusing on Zero Dawn, what was the primary focus of that for you, and what did you want to get across it? Because it seems it's really resonating with the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial idea there was, you know, as you said, Gorilla does not hold your hand when you're playing Horizon, which I think is very intentional. I think they want you to have to experiment, right? And I really like that. But even myself, as somebody who like has a science background and loves to experiment and has a lot of patience, there were things I would get frustrated with, also in Forbidden West too, and other games. And I'm like, there's definitely people out here who I think would benefit from, you know, having some pointers on how to take these machines down or how to do certain things. And having spent a lot of time experimenting with it myself, you know, that kind of felt like a good place to start, since I knew a lot about how to fight the machines and the mechanics of the combat. So, and it also felt, to be honest, like a safe place for me to start, because the game had been out for so long that it was kind of like low stakes, right? It was a good way for me to start practicing making videos with something that I didn't feel like I would be upset with if I didn't do well, because the game had been out for like 4 years at that point. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was kind of the idea. And just hope that the content basically helps people get over that hurdle of frustration so they can enjoy the excellent game that is there to have.
I think, well, one, I think it definitely does that, but I think one thing too that a lot of people might want out of a game, because, some people like Horizon has such a wonderful story and world building, and it's such an interesting take on the genre.
Yep.
But I think your videos also create a means in which people can challenge themselves, right? Because I think Horizon does a really good job of letting you enjoy it the way that you want to enjoy it. Like you could slap it on story mode and
Yep.
just do it purely for the world building and Aloy's journey. But
Absolutely.
yeah, you can slap it on ultra hard and you are in it. You are
Yeah.
really, really in it. So I think that as far as knowing these tips and tools, like so much of them are essential in those higher difficulties where maybe you don't need to kind of deal with them when you're playing on normal or otherwise. So in your opinion, when you get into the higher difficulties, what are some things that become essential that maybe people sleep on in their initial playthrough in Forbidden West?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of tool mechanics, like smoke bombs, for example, would be a great
Mm.
example, that people probably don't really need on lower difficulties. And then on higher difficulties, they become much more valuable. And then the other side of that coin sort of is, I think more strategies are much more viable on lower difficulties or normal difficulty. Like I'll get a lot of comments where on videos where I've like kind of said like plasma and adhesive are really bad. And I'll
Mm.
get comments, not a lot of comments, but I'll get some comments where people are like, oh, it's really good for this. And it's like, if you're on like normal difficulties, it does work well. But then they start to kind of not work so well on the higher difficulties. So it's hard to balance. That's one of the challenges with making the content is I have to test things on multiple difficulties a lot of times
Mm.
to kind of see if like my recommendation holds across different play styles and different difficulty levels. But
So taking out game capture and everything else, as far as like experimental game time is concerned, how much would you like? When do
a
you feel
lot.
like okay, yeah, right? When do you feel like okay, you have a really good handle of kind of either a weapon or a concept? Like how long do you usually spend on something like that? Because that is something completely outside my wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's a good question. It really depends on what it is I'm trying to make a video on or what it is I'm trying to get a handle on. I think like some machines, for example, are fairly easy to figure out how to take down, while others, like a shell snapper, was really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why the shell snapper was like the first machine that I did a hunting guide for Forbidden West, because it's part of a quest if you haven't played the game yet, and a fairly early
Why are you
side
watching?
quest.
We're gonna spoil everything.
We're gonna spoil everything, so you should keep watching, but just but yeah, the shell snapper was really tough. So I was like, let me figure out how to take this thing down. It took me a lot of time to figure out how I was going to make a guide for that. And even now it's like looking back on it, it's like, oh, I know much better ways to do that now, and so do a lot of other players. But yeah, and then there's other things where it just doesn't take as much time and you just kind of learn it through your regular gameplay. But making the videos, honestly, and like the community that's built up around them, which is awesome, like over on Discord and Reddit and everything, has made me a better player, and the impetus to like make a machine hunting guide or the impetus to make like a weapons masterclass video is motivation for me to sit down and really dive into like the details of how this thing works and talk to other people that now kind of help me figure those things out over on my Discord server, like how different specific mechanics of it work. And I just kind of love diving into those details. I kind of have like a science background, so I love just experimenting and figuring out all the details of how something works. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, like, the Horizon community knows their stuff. It's a very
Yes.
knowledgeable community in all aspects. But luckily, with that knowledge, at least in my experience, they're also a very understanding community. I don't think I very rarely run into anybody who's has whatever knowledge, whether it's gameplay or story, that is unwilling to either share that with you or is very judgmental or gatekeeping. It's something that I'm really, really, I can't say proud because it's not
Yeah.
like it's my community or anything, but it does bring me a lot of pride as being part of that community.
Yes.
That
Agreed.
people are willing to give constructive criticism or just point out better ways to do things.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I often say the Horizon community is much more mature than the average gaming community. And I
Sure.
think
Yeah.
both like interpersonally, but also just like I think it's an older average age too, which is part of it.
Yeah.
It's a more mature story and narrative to really latch onto and kind of develop or like explore all the intricacies of.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, it just kind of attracts an older audience, a more mature audience, whatever age you are. There's certainly mature young people out there that I've interacted with in the Horizon community as well. But yeah, that's one of the things I'm sort of like proud to be a part of as well with this community is that it's just a great community. Everybody's really willing to share. Everybody's really creative. Everybody's very open to feedback and giving help. So it's very cool.
Yeah. And speaking of that, a couple of things that the community will be celebrating very soon. Actually, not even very soon. By the time this video comes out, it will have
Yeah,
happened. The complete edition of Horizon Forbidden West will be hitting
that's right.
PlayStation 5 soon. So obviously, for those who haven't gotten to play all of it, or we're looking for the full condensed version of it, that's a really exciting opportunity. And we touched on this a little bit in the video that totally didn't happen before this. What were you looking forward to the most? Because we talked a little bit about the prospect of a Horizon Zero Dawn remaster,
Hmm.
and one, the things that you would potentially want to bring in, or at least think would make better for Zero Dawn in a remaster, and then secondly, what are some things from Zero Dawn that you miss that you would love to have in maybe a modded version of
On
Forbidden
PC.
West that
Yeah,
is incoming early next year for PC?
right. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think there's some low hanging
Almost
fruit
better the
ones.
second time.
I
I
do
mean, the
like
first time.
the
This is the
first
first
time.
time.
This is the first time. How many times are we going to hint this before people? Yeah. Um, I think there's some low hanging fruit to like pull from Forbidden West to Zero Dawn, right? So there's like auto pickup for berries. Everybody wants that. And, Ridgewood and everything like that. Some of the other quality of life things like all the different settings that we have in Forbidden West that just don't exist in Zero Dawn. And then
Right.
there's things that like I would love to see in Zero Dawn that probably aren't realistic to or come over from Forbidden West in a remaster, like getting the shield wing. That would be really cool. Plenty of people have had the experience of jumping off a cliff and dying when they go back to play Zero Dawn now. I know I
Oh
have,
my God, it's so bad.
which is just kind of funny too to do. But yeah, I think pulling those things, if you want to go bigger, like we were talking about a little bit, I would love to see like some of the machines get updated with like additional components that they have in Forbidden West. That would be really cool. Or even just like changed a little bit so that Zero Dawn feels a little different, if you go back and play it now and new
Mhm.
players wouldn't know the difference. So that would be kind of neat. And then I would love to pull the weapons from Forbidden West into Zero Dawn, like the Shredder, like spike throwers, very cool new weapons that we got in Forbidden West would be really cool to have in Zero Dawn, but I think that's probably a stretch for a remaster. I think we'll probably see things like graphical improvements, lighting improvements, and I'm really excited to see like you were mentioning earlier, updates to like facial animations and mocap because as much as I love Forbidden West, I think there's no doubt that Zero Dawn's story is just something really special. And it was executed very, very well. But to
Yeah.
just take it that extra notch higher of having like that Forbidden West mocap level of detail and quality in Zero Dawn for that story would be awesome.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's something about just like the fact that you are, and it does it in a believable way where a lot of games you're kind of put in there and you're like, of course, I don't know this stuff, but I feel like the protagonist would probably be more familiar than they are. But that was a really good story device for Gorilla, in my opinion, to make her an outcast and very insulated from number one,
Hmm.
the Nora are very insulated, and two, an outcast within the Nora is just on top of that very kind of sheltered. So being able to truly discover these things alongside your protagonist for the first time, I thought was really well done.
Yeah.
I would like, ideally, I would think this would be a cool goal for Horizon 3 is that they can kind of pull those things from ZD that we miss like the Golden Fast Travel Pack and
Yes.
things like that. I killed so many foxes for that Golden Fast Travel Pack.
Right. Yep.
I don't even want to talk about it. But I would also love some and I want to hear what you think because you break down these weapons and whatnot all the time. The viability of the weapons that were introduced in the Frozen Wilds, both the overdraw mechanics and things like that, but along with the special weapons that you could get as well, those Oseram lovely fun things. How would you think that they would fit into a more contemporary Horizon game like Forbidden West or even Horizon 3?
You mean like the Banuk bows that you get with all the blue gleam? Yeah.
The
And
Banuk bows
yeah,
and also like the Forge Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because we sort of got those things. Like we got the Rattler. It's now a Bolt Blaster, right?
Right.
Which is way better now. But we don't have a Forge Fire. We don't have a Storm Slinger. And we don't have, my favorite was the Ice Rail. That thing was a lot of fun, especially when you got some repeat special coils on it from New Game Plus runs. But I would love to see those things turn up again. Maybe narratively, if the Oseram come down from the claim to be involved in a battle with Nemesis. Spoiler alerts if you haven't played Forbidden West. Probably should have said that at the beginning. But maybe they'll bring some weapons down. I have to imagine they'll bring some type of new weapons down. I mean, the Oseram sisters were where we got Shredder gauntlets and spike throwers from. I guess in theory, well, maybe Shredders are supposed to be a Karja weapon, but Boomer does craft one in a side quest. I would love to see the Storm Slinger and the Forge Fire and the Ice Rail back. And
it was interesting too to kind of bounce to the next topic here a little bit. I'm not sure if you got a chance to play the original Horizon board game when it came out.
I did. I have it.
Yeah. So their kind of take on the way the individual tribes would go about hunting things was really interesting outside of just like Aloy is an amalgamation of whatever she learns, but like Karja is very hit and run and Oseram is in your face with fire and things like that. So kind of playing off of that a little bit before we launch into I'm moving too fast. The thing that I want to talk about next is the next board game that has been announced for Horizon, which is the Seeds of Rebellion, another game by Steamforge. The Kickstarter is going to drop this November. And we know a few things about it story-wise, but I kind of want to hear your take. Here's what it says on their website. Discover untold stories. In the dark corners of the mysterious Forbidden West, seeds of rebellion are taking root amongst the warlike Tenakth. This potential insurrection threatens the fragile peace between the Tenakth clans. We've worked closely with Guerrilla's narrative team to create an official story within Horizon's canon, taking place before Aloy's arrival in the Forbidden West. You and your fellow marshals must uncover, investigate, and combat the rebellion before unnecessary blood is shed and the fate of the clans is changed for generations to come. So a lot to unpack there. Number one, it's a story that will be canon within the Horizon universe, which is very exciting, and I have to commit to memory. And and along with that, also the opportunity to play as Tenakth marshals, which I think are some of the more fascinating characters in Horizon's kind of mythos in general. So number one, what are your takes off of that? What are you most excited about? What do you think we're kind of in for?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't put a lot of thought into the board game, but it is really interesting, like the description that you read, which I had seen when they announced it, that it takes place between Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. So like you said, it will be canon, and it will set up the rebellion that we see happen in Forbidden West. And so there will be some lore to uncover there, which I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, I would say I'm the most hopeful because I'm not sure about you, but of course Horizon unfortunately also has this great habit of creating characters that you become invested in and then they die immediately. In Zero Dawn it was Vala, and then in Forbidden West it was Fashav.
I was going to mention Fashav,
so I would be really interested in kind of a continued story for him, because this is really kind of where he's at. Kind of pitted with Regala a little bit after Hekarro starts to kind of embrace the notion of peace with the Karja that really sets Regala off. So I would be really interested to get to know other marshals that were killed during the embassy attack. Spoilers again, don't know why you're still watching. We told you we were going to spoil everything. And along with that, just yeah, just a whole other story. As far as things that you would be curious about in that time, what piques your interest and what would you be hopeful for?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention Fashav. I think it'd be really interesting to get a little bit more backstory on him, and also Regala. Maybe we
Yeah.
get to see a little bit more of how that developed and how she kind of broke away and became a rebel. I'd like to see that play out a little bit. And I guess just kind of seeing what exactly they're going to do in terms of gameplay with this board game. Like,
Yeah.
I was anticipating if they were going to do another board game that it was going to be Machine Strike, you know,
Right? Yeah, that
especially
seems like a
because,
shoe-in.
yeah, especially because when you pre-ordered the collectors or the Regala edition of Forbidden West, you got a physical Machine Strike piece or two, maybe. I have them on the shelf back here. I should go look, but, yeah, I was like, oh, for sure they're going to launch a board game and you're going to be able to use these pieces in the board game.
Yeah.
And they haven't done it yet. And I feel like they must have intended to, or maybe they still intend to, and they just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, was surprised by this new board game.
What did you think of Machine Strike in general? Honest opinion. Like for me, like I remember playing The Witcher 3 and inevitably it just became Witcher the Wild Gwent for me because I just would log in and just play because that's all I wanted to do. I'm not sure if Forbidden West got me that hooked on Machine Strike, but what were your thoughts? I don't want to lead the witness.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big Machine Strike player. I think it's cool to have like a game inside of a game, and I think they were definitely going for something like Gwent. That may have been the inspiration for it. I think it's a cool game, but I kind of played it to get past what I needed to get 100%, and then I didn't play much more than that. So I know people do
I'm
like
right
it
there
though,
with you.
so it's cool that it's in the game, and I'm glad people enjoy it. And it might be cool
also-
to have it as a physical board game. So
Yeah, that would be a great collector's piece there. And it also unfortunately created a whole like lore paradox that people ask me about all the time. And I'm like, I don't know why the Quen have a Gwent board. I have no idea. It's a to knock the game. And
right.
please stop asking me because I don't have answers for you.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So that's interesting, but I think the story here could be really compelling. And I enjoyed the gameplay of the previous board game. I thought it was a lot of fun. We played the cooperative version a lot, which I thought was a little bit lenient. I think it's supposed to really sing when you're competing against each other.
Yeah.
But this one sounds like it's going to be cooperative
Yeah.
in general. So you're kind of going to be uncovering that mystery. So I'm really looking forward to that. The Kickstarter starts this November. So if you want it, go to Steamforge, check it out. And we are very, very hopeful. Along with this, you talked about Machine Strike a little bit. Is there any other story in Horizon do you feel that would be appropriate kind of in a board game setting or you think might be interesting?
That's a good question. I guess I'm not thinking of it so much as a board game, but I've thought about like they could totally do like one-off single games of some sort. Maybe it could be a board game for certain characters, like Ikri from the Frozen Wilds.
Ooh, yeah.
We don't know really what happens with her after that, what she goes and does. That would be really interesting to explore. Like I'm just thinking stories that I want to explore, that I guess could be told through a board game, but also a prequel for
comics
Rost.
are a great way to go about that too, maybe.
Yes. Yep. Comics. Yep.
Yeah. It's I enjoyed Talana's story, and I felt like, and I think this was a real life issue that I think she was supposed to be featured in Forbidden West more, but I think like scheduling conflicts as far as like the actors' availability was kind of the reason why I got cut, which makes me very sad.
Yeah.
Big Talana fan. So I liked her
well.
arc. Yeah, I liked her arc in the story. I loved the Liberation arc. Because talk about another character that we didn't get to see at all really in Zero Dawn was Ursa.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to see her entire story unfold, which I thought was really compelling. So Ikri, I think, could deserve that treatment. Rost, I think a lot of people would love that treatment for. I would love one for Nil, personally, because we know
that'd be interesting.
Next to nothing about him, really.
Yeah, how he became that way would be really interesting.
Right? Evidently, that's not even his real name. Like,
oh, really?
When you,
I didn't know.
Yeah, when you go to Sunstone Rock, you talk to Warden Geneva, and you're like, well, I met this person named Nil, and she's like, oh, that's what he's calling himself these days. Like,
yeah, I remember.
What?
Okay, yeah, interesting.
So I think those ones would be really interesting. I would love to see a like maybe like a Red Raid style Risk board game or something like that, where
Mm,
you could either play as the Karja or you could play as different clans trying to fight against them. I don't know. Those kind of games really spark my interest.
yeah.
One thing that I wanted to get your opinion on that I was a little getting ahead of myself before, but now is the time.
Okay.
This multiplayer game
Yes.
that Horizon has been kind of that we're headed towards right now.
Hmm.
What excites you the most and also makes you the most nervous about this really big leap into something much different than Gorilla and their team has tackled before?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought up multiplayer because I wanted to talk with you about this and
Yeah,
also hear what you think of it. But it's exciting and nerve wracking at the same time. Like you said, I think I'm excited because I actually do enjoy multiplayer games, even competitive multiplayer games.
mhm,
But I know that a lot of the community wants story focused single player games, right? So this is like,
yeah.
why are they spending time on multiplayer? Is it going to be good? Should we just do Horizon 3 instead? Also, I'll say this because I've seen a little bit of confusion just for anybody watching this. The multiplayer is not Horizon 3. Horizon 3 will be single player on its own. It will be Aloy's story. That's its own thing. Multiplayer will be a spin-off, a separate game. So there's been a few people that have mentioned in comments and stuff, and they're clearly confused about that. So I just want to make sure people know that multiplayer is not the third game.
Right.
But I'm excited for it because I think any kind of multiplayer game has more longevity to it, right? And that to me is like a way that Horizon can become larger as a franchise, which I just want to see in general because I love it, right? I think we
Yeah.
all want to see that. And so even if like the multiplayer is not your type of game, or even if it's not my type of game, like I still want it to be successful because I want the franchise to be successful and it will
Yeah.
fuel, Horizon 3 and other Horizon games.
No,
So,
I'm right there with you.
but I am excited for it. I personally do want some competitive aspect to it, but I'd want it to be like co-op.
Yeah.
I think Destiny, I haven't played a whole lot of Destiny, but I think Destiny is a good model for that in a lot of ways. At least some of the modes that they have that are like competitive co-op. We've talked about this a little bit with people on my Discord server and in my community, but something that's like we have to clear cauldrons that Hephaestus is now controlling
Hmm.
after Forbidden West could be really interesting. Like it could fit narratively, right? If the
Yeah.
multiplayer were to take place after Forbidden West, Hephaestus is now more powerful. It's out on the Cauldron network again, creating larger machines that maybe Aloy can still take down by herself, but a lot of hunters won't be able to by themselves. And so
Hmm.
you have to do it cooperatively and maybe try to shut down the cauldrons. So I
Yeah.
think that would be a really cool angle for the multiplayer. I have no idea if that's what it's going to be, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's it's funny that you bring up Destiny because I used to play
Oh,
Destiny a
really?
lot, and that's a whole other tangent. But the one thing I will say, as far as like world building and story, you can have both. Like, I think one of the strongest suits of Destiny, and this is going to sound very confusing, the storytelling is hit and miss, but the world building is great.
Hmm.
The world in which Destiny takes place in is fascinating. That actually what started my YouTube journey. Like my one of my favorite YouTubers of all time is My Name is Bife, and he's like the lore master or one of the lore masters of Destiny. And it's crazy those kind of like things where I'm very lucky that they take it easy in Horizon about like weapons that have specific pieces of lore attached to them or
Hmm.
like items and things that you got to seek out. There's a few of them like, a Reeve's Downfall or, the Death Seeker,
Hmm.
all those things. Like there's a few of them, but it's not like Destiny where you have to read through every weapon because something might have a nugget in it. And it's like, oh, I just in awe
Is
of
it
that.
like
It's
that? I
it's
didn't realize that.
yeah, right.
Interesting.
So that makes me scared a little bit, but
Hmm.
in that, I think that Horizon could successfully make it into a multiplayer. And like you said, it could potentially introduce a whole other type of gamer into the world of Horizon, where maybe they're not super
Right.
into single player, RPG kind of style games, but this is something they can hop on and play with their friends, like a Monster Hunter type game. I'm not sure if you played a lot of Monster Hunter,
Yeah.
but
Yep. Monster Hunter
I
World.
think
Yeah.
that vibe could definitely be something that's a lot of fun. Get 4 people together, you're going after this hunt, because one thing, whether people kind of got behind this game or not, one thing that you kind of learn in Call of the Mountain, which was Horizon's VR game, which, if you don't know, those of you who didn't get a chance to play it, because it was, you'd have to buy this whole other thing. So I totally understand if that was not up your alley. But you really get a sense of like how challenging it is to even take down smaller monsters by yourself if you're not Aloy. Like the scope of them, you don't have a focus, like all these things that Aloy kind of just has in her toolbox all the time that you don't get as just your typical, even fairly skilled hunter out there in the 31st century. So I do think that even together, like you said, that these machines could pose a real challenge, even as is. But then you talk about potentially being modified by Hephaestus, and I think there is some evidence within Horizon 3 that the machines, even that we know, are going to change due to Hephaestus kind of interlocking with the Zenith printer matrix for a hot second there. So that's scary. Yes. So I think there's potential there. What did you think? I'm not sure if you saw the picture, but there was like an art leak a while back.
I've seen the leaked gameplay. I don't know if I should say that, but
I have. I decided to forego that. I try to keep myself as like of that as possible. But
I have
your
seen the
thoughts
picture
on that? It is different.
Yeah, both of those things, I think I'm not putting a lot of stock in them, because at least from the information that was leaked with them, they were from so long ago, and they were from like a pre-alpha build. So, I mean, my initial impression, if that's the game, it's not the graphics I would want. It's a little bit like Fortnite feeling. I think a lot of people would describe it that way.
Yeah.
But it's also like not, I don't think it looks bad. It just looks different. Now, I actually kind of think that what that leak was, there's actually like 2 multiplayer Horizon games rumored to be in development. One we know is confirmed, developed by Guerrilla. And then I talked about this in a video where I talked about multiplayer, but there's supposedly a second one that's supposed to be like a mobile game developed by a Korean studio. And I actually think that leak may have been like an early build of experimenting with what they wanted to do in a mobile game potentially. I don't know, but potentially that's what it is.
Yeah, I could see that, because you'd have to pare it down to make it even remotely viable for like a mobile game. But I would hate to see, because like we've said before, it's one of the great things about Horizon are its visuals. They're so striking and beautiful and vibrant, and to kind of like, I don't know, put it in a more cartoony filter, I don't know, it would take adjusting for sure. It would take a lot of for existing players to get used to.
Yeah, I guess what I would say, right, and like why I said I don't put a lot of stock in that leak is I'm sure it was probably real, but it was so early, and I also have a lot of confidence that Guerrilla understands their community, just based on like watching their live streams and watching how they interact with community members on Twitter, and just in general. Like, I think they're in touch enough with the community that they know kind of what people want in a Horizon game and what makes a Horizon game a Horizon game. And so I'm hopeful that the multiplayer will like even though I said I want a competitive aspect to it, I also think it's extremely important that it has a way to enjoy it and play it with friends that's not competitive, or at least like highly cooperative, where you don't feel like you have to be like, fighting for your life all the time. Because I don't think I don't think the existing player base has a lot of interest in that, and I think Guerrilla knows that. The flip side of that coin, though, you asked what makes me nervous about it is a multiplayer, if it has some competitive aspect, going to pull in a new crowd of people that kind of changes the flavor of the Horizon community, right? Like how we talked before about how it's really mature. People are very open and kind and willing to help each other. And you get that little bit more of toxicity when something's competitive, right? So my hope is that they can strike a really good balance between a game that really feels like Horizon, that also has longevity, right? So we can, you can play as much as you want of Zero Dawn and Forbidden West over and over again, New Game Plus, but at some point it's like,
Right.
all right, I've done everything 10 times over. So something with longevity would be awesome that still feels like Horizon. And then, just kind of maintains the feel of of what a Horizon game is, so that the community can kind of grow, but still be the great thing that it is now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And but I've said in the past that I would rather have them take big swings than play it safe. Because
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's one of whatever you thought about like the Zenith storyline. It was definitely not what I had thought where the story was going. However, I do appreciate them taking a swing,
Hmm.
and they weren't afraid to take a risk. Or
Yep.
because I remember playing the Forbidden West for the first time, and they just launch in right with the Odyssey stuff. I was like, wow, okay, this is like some more obscure lore
Yeah.
that you would really have to search out in the first game to have anything connect.
Hmm.
So the fact that they just came in guns blazing, and it's like this is the story we're telling, so buckle up. So I do appreciate the boldness there. So I think it's worth the risk, and obviously you got to say that now because it's happening.
Yeah.
But
Well, and Zero Dawn was a
I have a
risk
lot of
too.
faith in Gorilla and what they do. One thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because this is a unique take that I didn't know until we spoke a little bit earlier, was you
Hmm.
discovered the game on the PC launch
Yeah.
of Zero Dawn. So I wanted to ask you because from what I understand, that did not go smoothly.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty buggy at the beginning. It was I forget which porting studio handled it to begin with, but it was kind of rough at the beginning. I didn't play it like on launch day. I played it a few months later, but it was still pretty buggy. And I enjoyed it enough where I just kind of ignored those bugs for a long time, and then eventually it got patched. And now Nixis is handling it, or handled it, which is a PlayStation studio that is now handling the entire port of Forbidden West. So I'm very
Okay.
hopeful that Forbidden West's port is solid from day one, because the studio that cleaned up Zero Dawn is handling Forbidden West from the start.
That's good to hear. I didn't know that because that was one thing that I felt like, man, I felt really bummed that due to the nature of the launch on the PC version, that a lot of people, and justifiably so, right? People have only a certain amount of time, and luckily we live in this golden era of gaming where there's
Hmm.
so many both AAA titles and independent games that are really worth your time, that to have the patience to just be like, I'm gonna play this buggy version of a game that
Yeah.
everybody says is great.
Yeah.
um, I'm just hoping um, that they're able to not have to deal with that the second go around, because I do think that it probably hampered the amount of people who were going to play Zero Dawn at the
Probably.
launch of the PC release.
Yeah, people probably started and then were like, this is broken, and then kind of
Yeah,
didn't come back to it. So,
because
yeah.
that's one of the things about Zero Dawn that I really liked was, a bug appeared here and there, but honestly, like I played Zero Dawn in 2017 and it ran smooth for me. I know some
Hmm.
people ran into a couple glitchy things, but I don't know. Like I played Skyrim a billion times and I can live through glitchiness. Like,
Yeah.
but there was no glitch that prevented me from going through in a storyline
Hmm.
or, quest progression. It was kind of a quirky thing here and there. I think like
Right.
every once in a while you see the Stormbird kind of doing like some breakdancing on the ground, and then it just like flies off into the air, which at this
Right.
point I actually enjoy. But
Yeah. Yeah.
those are like, brings me back.
Right.
But hopefully that it'll be better at launch. And for those of you, if I didn't say it this go around, that is coming out early next year. So look for that.
Hmm.
Really, really excited for a whole other crop of players. What I will say is, and I think there is some confusion about this as well. So to clarify, the complete edition of Forbidden West is a PS5 exclusive, because Burning
Yes.
Shores, once again, for better or worse, is not coming to PS4. And I
Yeah.
understand people
Unfortunately.
wanting to play it, but after playing it, I'm pretty sure it would light my PlayStation 4 on fire with what the DLC brought to the table.
Yes, it would. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate it can't come to PS4, but yeah, so that's why the complete edition's a PS5 exclusive.
Yeah. But, eventually, I'm sure that it's the complete edition that's coming to PC. So,
Hmm.
if you got a PC that can run it, I'm sure that it's going to look astounding, because that was the thing. Like, as beautiful as Forbidden West was, it did have to kind of pull itself a little bit to be
A
able
little
to
bit.
have any chance of running on PlayStation 4. So to just kind of see the PS5 kind of like let's push this sucker a little bit, it was really remarkable. So I was looking forward to that.
Hmm.
A couple things that I want to ask you. I have a couple questions from our membership community
Yeah.
that I picked a couple that I think were kind of interesting. And the first one that I want to bring up is from community member The Rage Pig. What theories do you guys have for the true objective of Nemesis? If all it wants is to kill the Zeniths and they're already dead, why is it still a threat to Earth?
That's a good point because they're all dead now.
Yeah, finally.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'll take a stab at it if you
Yeah.
don't mind first, but I would say it doesn't know they're dead at this point.
Right.
So it's still coming for them, right? Once it gets here or when it finds out that they are dead, it's probably still going to deduce or surmise that humans are a problem in general and will probably want to eradicate whatever humans it encounters on Earth. So I think it will still be a problem even once it learns that the Zeniths are gone. But it will be very interesting to see that moment happen because I think we probably will on some level, or at least learn about it. You know, that Nemesis will learn that the Zeniths are no longer alive.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Like number one, like the signal that it was transmitting with Hades, that stopped, and two, Hades is no longer in existence in any form, to the best of our knowledge. And really, I think another thing is like the consciousness, most of them that exist within Nemesis truly saw themselves as better than most of humanity, right? There's this really interesting data point that I forget the name off the top of my head, but it's really talking about life extension therapies in general and kind of the dangers of that, because not only did these life extension therapies make you live longer, but they made you more mentally acute. You learned more. You were actually tangibly, quantifiably a better human being. And what that does to your level of empathy for everyone else. So there are a few good eggs in the Zenith kind of cocktail there, as far, Stanley Chen, Peter Shimvumbe, with that, as
Right.
far as the lore that we have, they're good amongst Zeniths are concerned. But on the whole, there's some nefarious, like straight up, all you need is Eric Visser's consciousness, and it's probably going to want to kill everybody that's
Yeah.
on Earth. Just the one.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing to keep in mind is it's like in large part composed of their consciousnesses, right? So that is
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
what Nemesis is. And so even though the Zeniths are dead, they kind of are still there as part of Nemesis.
Yeah, so I could totally see them. Yeah, I see that Nemesis is probably going to be a fairly unreasonable entity. It's pretty single-minded in what it wants to do, and
Yeah.
in that it makes it kind of unpredictable. So even though that wasn't what I envisioned, kind of what the extinction signal was moving down the line, I think it does make for a interesting villain for the third game, and I do think that it does want to kill everyone.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I have another one, or did you have one?
Go for it.
Okay, yeah. So, Dark Puck asks, any thoughts on the so-called Ramses project and if it may pertain to anything Laundra was searching for? Travis Tate mentions it by name in a proving lab data point, Bad Urges, and also mentions it in a world data point, Shakeups. Seems pretty interesting to me. So, number one, talk about the Horizon community knowing their stuff. This is like a deep cut under a deep cut.
Yeah, I don't think I know this one.
Yeah, so essentially, kind of long story short, and I can't actually, short story short, there isn't a lot about this.
Yeah.
Before the Hades Proving Lab was the Hades Proving Lab, it was Latapolis, which was just a place where Pharaoh Automated Solutions made crazy things that were really, really bad. Really, really bad. Cyber nukes, things that he didn't want the public knowing about. But when Travis Tate got in there, him being who he is, he's just like, you know what? I found all your dirty laundry, Ted, so don't kick me out of here because I will let everybody know. Have a nice day. And that's one of my favorite data points, actually. Travis schools Ted. That's like when he just tells him off. It's like, so rare do you get to actually shove it in
I do
Ted
remember
Pharaoh's
that
face,
data
so that
point,
was
yeah.
great. So as far as like the Ramses project is concerned, it's only brought up like 2 or 3 times and in passing. and it's talked about like taking nasty pieces from it and putting it into a different kind of framework. So for my money, I think that the best way that this could get brought up is we still don't know the real cause of the glitch. That's like one of the only big mysteries that we have from Zero Dawn that's carried over into the rest of the game.
Yes.
So for my money, I would not be surprised if something Ted Faro made snuck its way into the programming, potentially from the Ramses project or something like that, into the thing that eventually led to the end of the world. Because that's still, like I said, it's still a mystery that we don't know about. But as far as your thoughts on that, and do you have any thoughts on like what do you think the Faro glitch is?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it would definitely make narrative sense that it was somehow something Ted did inadvertently, messing around with something he shouldn't have been. That would be very narrative. That would make a lot of narrative sense, and it would be in character for him. I think, I don't know that we'll ever learn what it is. I think that's kind of one of those plot devices that's maybe best left to mystery, because it just makes it that much more interesting to kind of speculate about what really started this. And it's kind of like we don't really need to know, right? To complete the story arc. You don't really need to know why it happened. You just need to know that it did.
Yeah.
And we know enough details about how it came and like how it created the whole series of problems that it did, without knowing exactly how it started in the first place. But it would be really interesting to know.
Yeah.
As far as the Ramses, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say with the Ramses project, we could see that come in maybe when we're looking for these other weapons that are hinted at through the data point you get from Silence. Or is it a conversation point or a data point at the end of the
you had
shores?
it. It's probing the graveyard. Yeah.
Right. Where we're looking for powerful weapons from various companies around the world that could help us against Nemesis, right? Maybe the Ramses project stuff comes in there.
Yeah, you got those were some really interesting data points. I talked about it in my 3 story points was
I
like
saw
that one. And then I think the one that it's like Dagger in My Boot from Laundra, who people think is very divisive. I loved him. He was hideous. He was so remarkably unlikable. He was like,
he was a great antagonist. Great antagonist.
Yeah, especially for like a DLC, right? I thought he did a great job. The last one I have here is, and I think this one's interesting because this gets thrown around every once in a while. Kiki Jewel asks, is Silence the true final boss of the series?
Very interesting.
Because, obviously, I can't see Silence not being a part of this franchise because he's so integral to the plot and is Aloy's foil through the whole thing. And, obviously it's just incredibly tragic that we lost Lance Reddick so early. Yeah. But I would be surprised if they completely wrote him off.
I would too.
The character. So I'm probably betting on his role being reprised. I know Destiny brought in Keith David, who I think is a remarkable voice actor and a good actor in general across the board. Great voice. So what do you think about that? Do you think Silence could be the true final boss of the series?
I think that's a really interesting take. I agree that I think Silence's character will continue on in Horizon 3. I think he's too important of a plot device and too important of a character to just kind of drop. They could figure out a way to do it, but it would be I think they probably had pretty big plans for him. Now, if that's him being the ultimate, enemy or antagonist in some form, it's a really interesting idea. It could be, I could see it in some form where, you have Aloy kind of representing justice and fairness. And she's kind of going through this journey in Forbidden West now where she's learning social skills essentially and the value of like community, which people kind of give her crap about a little bit too often, I think, not really hardcore Horizon fans, but other people. And it's kind of like, you got to remember, this girl was an outcast who lived with one older guy her whole life until a few months before Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. Like, she has no social skills.
Yeah.
So,
and with a character like that, I mean, that's what you want out of a character arc. You
Right.
want them to start somewhere and then end somewhere else. So yeah, I think that's an unfair criticism too, because I think so often anymore we're given a protagonist who's good at everything in the beginning,
Hmm.
and then they're just the same through the whole story, and that's not compelling. So
Right.
I'm with you. It's like, oh, she's so unlikable in the beginning of the game. It's like she's got some big problems like
Trauma,
that are would
basically.
crush the average person. So how you process that, I think, no matter what, is fair, and then learning to kind of come out of that
Hmm.
is admirable because it shows growth. And I think that's also, you get a defining point at the end of the story where, through the whole time that she's kind of known about this stuff, she's been wanting to live up to the legacy of Elizabeth.
Hmm.
And at the end of Forbidden West, she makes a fundamentally different choice to not give up on this world in hopes of a new one, but to fight for the one that she has. And she's okay with that. So I thought overall where she started and where she ended up, and I think Forbidden West continued, or excuse me, Burning Shores continued that. I think then she's almost
Yes.
taking on a mentor role of somebody like that, and obviously, they develop feelings for one another, but it's a different now. She's in the opposite
Right. And
scenario.
with
She's kind
Beta,
of the Varl in that scenario. So
right.
I think there's a lot of growth there, and I want growth out of my characters personally.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then I think as far as Silence ultimately being the enemy, I guess I could see it happening. I personally think we're more likely to see Aloy and Silence just continue to be at loggerheads, but
Mm,
forced to work together as they like continue to come up against these bigger and bigger threats. Because there's
yeah.
no doubt that Silence is like extremely intelligent and has a lot of valuable knowledge that he's uncovered and skills. Um, so I don't think that they can totally like the threat they're facing just seems too big
Yeah.
for.
I think there might be a point where they break after the defeat of Nemesis, but
Mhm.
I made a video before his passing that I speculated on, just kind of like analyzing what we know about Silence and like what could compel him to stay on Earth. Because at root, like, Silence is perhaps the most self-interested person on the planet.
Mhm.
And no matter what the cost is, in order to achieve what he wants, he's going to do that. And he's even admitted as much, where he's like, given that I'd take some more safeguards, but I'd 100% do it again. Like 100%, just unapologetically. So I
Yeah.
kind of had a hard time buying that when he came back, that it was like a
Right.
complete change of heart and he's just part of the team. Like,
Agreed.
I think he did some quick math
Yep.
and was like, you know what, I'm going to stick around. And I think the ultimate prize for him, because in this, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Um, he's not in it for money. He
Mhm.
doesn't care about material wealth. He's not in it for power in the traditional sense. He's manipulated entire tribes, but that was never why he was doing it. He's always just been after knowledge.
Yep.
Um, but I think even with the level of immortality Zenith's had obtained, and he could probably get on board the Odyssey, he's still confined by a human consciousness. So I think knowing and finding out about Nemesis and the possibility of digital transcendence, I think for him might be the ultimate prize on the board.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. I could see that.
Because like, not only are you like privy, because you have the Apollo archive, which is phenomenal. It's the sum of all human knowledge, but now it's like that was the benchmark until you find out that there's a whole other tier of sentience you could reach.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, this was great, but it's like that meme of the guy looking over his shoulder at the other girl as they're walking away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, ooh, digital transcendence, you're looking good. So,
Yes.
for me, I think that might be
Hmm.
perhaps the ultimate kind of crowning achievement for him. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think that's a very plausible theory. There's something we're going to have to find out about what Silence really wants and is up to. It could be
Yeah.
that, I could see that being where it goes. It does beg that question though, like you said, like when he's on the stairs and he's about to go in the shuttle up to the Odyssey, and they kind of say like, "Really, you're leaving? What calculated move did he make there where he stayed?"
Right.
Because I do agree, it's a calculated move. He would not just all of a sudden have empathy for this group of people that he really hasn't spent a lot of time with.
Yeah.
For the most part, he's really only interacted with Aloy, and for the most part, those interactions have been for him to get information,
Hmm.
not like mutual friendship in any way. So
Right.
I
I
definitely agree
think
that it was
that
a
he has,
calculated move, and I
yeah.
really am curious why he chose to stay because he must have a really good reason.
And I think even with Aloy, I mean, there's maybe like shadows of empathy, but I think he's gained more respect for her
Yeah.
in her skill and capacity for her achievements. I
Hmm.
don't think it's so much on an emotional level. I think it's just like scoreboard is what it is. Like this is a formidable person,
Yep.
for better or worse. So I should probably have her in my on my team
Hmm.
until it's no longer like
Yeah.
useful to me.
And that may have been some of the math he was doing there, right? Maybe
Yeah.
he was figuring she's pretty formidable and she has a lot of allies, and
Hmm.
I'm not sure how, if he launches himself in a shuttle and flies away in the Odyssey, how anyone could do anything about it. But
Yeah.
um, maybe he figured there was something that they would try to do to stop him,
Mm.
and he didn't want that to happen, and he'd rather, play the longer game. I don't know.
Yeah, he's such a it's so tragic. He's such a compelling character. He is the perfect foil to Aloy, who is the epitome of selflessness, and he is the epitome of selfishness, where
Yeah.
even together, they're not even doing it for themselves, right? It's something to a different tier. I want to see how that story unfolds. I think
Yeah.
it's a story worth telling. Obviously, it's up to the Reddick estate whether they want and feel like it's appropriate. Obviously, that's the most important thing. But
Hmm.
I would love to see how those two forces kind of reach final resolution in the third game.
Yeah. My initial thought, like when I first finished Forbidden West the first time, was, oh, he's going to be the new Zenith. He's going to try and steal Gaia
Mm,
and go up in the ship and start his own planet somewhere.
mm,
But I feel like that's more of a Ted move than a
mm.
Silence move, right?
Fair.
Like Ted, spoiler alert, kept himself alive because he wanted to be there for like the children, as he put it,
So
very, very
weird.
creepily. And I don't think Silence cares about people that much. I think, like you said,
I
he's
agree.
he's perfectly happy to be on his own, solo, lone wolf. So yeah, digital transcendence is maybe his end game.
I think it's the only thing you could be interested in. But those are the questions from my folks. What do you got?
Yeah, let me give you one from VB. She had a few different questions about Elysium. Kind of wanted to get your thoughts on
Oh, yeah.
Elysium. Why did they go offline? And then I kind of expanded on it a little bit. I think she asked why, something about the sterilization. And then I was expanding on, like, I've also seen other people speculate about, could they possibly still be alive? Did they
Mm,
have tech like the Zeniths that they figured out how to become immortal, and they're like in a bunker somewhere or
sure.
living on some other continent or an island. Um, yeah, curious what you think about Elysium,
Yeah.
and I know I've seen a
It's
little
a,
bit
it's
about that in your videos, but
yeah. It's an interesting subject because it was such a throwaway line that Gaia just dropped and never brought up again. I'm like,
right,
no.
yeah,
I want more.
let's talk about that for a
Um,
second.
so to hear that it went offline, so Elysium designed to exist for those members who contributed to Far Zenith, excuse me, to Zero Dawn
Hmm.
for roughly a century's time. And after that, basically everybody dies out. And the reason why sterilization is supposedly essential for that is because if people are procreating, then those resources diminish exponentially.
Right.
So they sterilize everybody who is going to do that. So the fact that it goes offline early is interesting. Some people speculate that the swarm found it. Like it's kind of a similar situation to what happened with Gaia Prime. Like a
Hmm.
seal broke, and then they basically swarmed the thing. At first, I thought this would actually be the plot line of Horizon, the Netflix series, or at least a
Mm.
sub point of it, because the series was called, I think, like the working title was Horizon 2077, and I thought that was incredibly weird because in Horizon history,
Everything's
not a
dead.
lot happens.
Yeah, there's not
Like
much going on.
everybody's already dead. We're not in the 31st century. So the one kind of thing that I was thinking about was Horizon 2077. That puts it around a little over a decade after Zero Day.
Mm.
So you could expand you could tell the story of enduring victory through the eyes of somebody recalling that experience in Elysium
Mm.
before something happens to them. So you could kind of bounce back and forth between Aloy's story and kind of the stories of enduring victory.
That would be
So
really cool.
as to what happened to them, that's really challenging because judging kind of doing some roundabout math as far as people in so the first bunker that you find in Zero Dawn. Sorry, this this is a good question. I
Oh,
have to
go
dive
ahead.
a
Go
little
ahead.
bit.
Yeah.
The first bunker that you find in Zero Dawn, where Aloy picks up her focus, is
Yes.
for beta and gamma level personnel.
Hmm.
But they're essentially informed that the transport to take them there is never coming. And they say you could take a chance to basically make it on foot, and there's like an offline in there that it's several miles away.
Hmm.
So Elysium, at least from inference, is not too far from Aletheia 9.
Right.
Um, so as far as the fact that one, we haven't found that, I don't think the Nora, even if they found it, they wouldn't mess with it. Because it's taboo. But I don't think it is on another continent. I think it's because also all truly essential Zero Dawn facilities had to be prioritized to the swarm spread. So
Hmm.
everything that was going to be last had to be pretty central US
Right.
because it started in the South Pacific and it spreads around. So if you're going to build Elysium and you need those people working up until the very end, you can't really put it anywhere else. So it has to be kind of in the Zero Dawn part of the map.
Yes. Agreed. For
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I think that how it went offline is really interesting. As far as them achieving a level of immortality, that's I think it's not obviously not outside the realm of possibility because the whole ecto chambers that were used in Zero Dawn are straight up Zenith tech.
Right. Right.
They're pre Shimvumbe kind of developments that were abandoned later, but they are Zenith tech. So, and you have essentially a group of the smartest individuals the world had ever seen locked in one place.
Minus the
So,
alphas.
with all the time in the world, so
Yeah.
they could probably figure something out. I like that as a plot point. What I think is probably more likely to have happened is some kind of mechanical failure in the decade that led up to that, and the swarm eventually found them and consumed
Hmm.
them because that falls into the category also of Minerva would not have deactivated the swarm in that amount of time because it's roughly 50 years post zero day. So anything in between that time point, the swarm is sleeping but still active. So if it sniffed
Gotcha.
something, it would probably kill anything and feed.
Gotcha. Very cool.
So long-winded
We're getting the
answer.
full random
That's a
side
good
quest
question.
treatment here, man. This is what I'm here for. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, if I put the tinfoil hat on just for a second,
Sure.
I mean, I would agree with you. The most logical thing is they're probably dead. They probably got attacked by the swarm. But there is something to where, maybe they pulled a far zenith, and they went offline intentionally
Mm,
because not everybody was there yet. And I remember like the max capacity for Elysium was like 2,000 people or something.
something
That's
like
what they
that.
had the resources for. The alphas didn't make it there because Ted killed them.
Nope.
We know some of the other people, like you were mentioning, beta and gammas in the facility that Aloy finds her focus in, didn't make it there. So there's some like lower than threshold number of people already in Elysium when it goes
Yeah.
offline. And maybe that group figured out, or somebody within that group decided for the group or maybe against the group that they were going to cut off any new people coming so that they could have more resources
Mm.
and develop immortality tech or what. I don't know, could be.
That I mentioned before, you have an incredibly intelligent and capable subsect of society in
Mhm.
one place with all the time in the world to figure that out.
Yep.
So, as far as like side projects are concerned, while you're down there, unless you're Travis Tate who just uploaded a bunch of adult content, if you want to spend your time towards something, then learn thinking about how to survive past, just being in this bunker. It's not a bad way to spend your time.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. How much more time do we have? Because I've got more topics to talk about.
Fire away, whatever you want to add. This is, this is what I like talking about.
Cool. Okay. So another lore thing I wanted to ask you about,
Sure.
and I know you covered this in your most recent video about like hints for Horizon 3, but the Bryn data point, well, it's not really a data point from Bryn. It's a machine oil painting on a wall that
Yes.
clearly was from Bryn, the Banuk shaman that drinks machine oil.
Yep. Our favorite.
I don't know if everybody's found this yet in the Burning Shores, but it's on like the northeast-ish side of the map. If you want to go look for it, there's a Banuk painting clearly from Bryn, and then inside there's a data point from an Oseram who comes across this painting. And I have it here because there's a line in there that's really interesting to me.
Give it to me.
I'll read the whole thing. So I set my eye upon this sigil that reeks of machine oil, and a wary itch raised the hairs about my neck. I was being watched, sure as the sky is up and the dirt is down. And so the next line is what's really interesting to me. Worse, an ominous whisper called to me from the rocks and stones, hissing of secrets and portents of an ancient ghost rising in the east. And then he goes on to say that he doesn't know if it's mortal or spirit, and he's scared, and it's a warning, go away. But this part about the ominous whisper calling to him from rocks and stone, and hissing of secrets and an ancient ghost. And I know you talked about this in your video, but I kind of just want to talk about it here too.
Yeah.
Like, what could this entity be? Is this guy delusional right now and he's not really hearing anything?
Yeah.
I immediately went to like the word hissing, and I was like, the Burning Shores is very volcanic. Maybe he's hearing hissing from steam, and you're kind of near the cauldron in that area. So maybe there's Hephaestus is involved somehow. And then the ghost rising in the east, right?
Yeah.
Is really interesting. Is that vast silver? Is it cyan somehow? Maybe just because I want to see more of cyan, but
Me too.
yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man. So yeah, in the video I did, I also wanted to tackle like prophecy in general in Horizon, because so much can be explained. Almost everything can be explained with science, right? Like advanced enough science is just magic, especially to people who don't understand it.
Right.
So one, what is Bryn doing that is giving him
Visions.
valid insight
Yeah.
into what's coming that has proven to be correct? Because it's such an outlier in Horizon lore that the actual prophecy exists. And then I touched on a little bit, if you haven't seen the video, like this isn't the only time this has happened, where, you know, the artist in the Frozen Wilds effectively paints a mural of what's coming in Forbidden West, which is like only through the lens of, those are the things you kick yourself about if you like what I like and make content like I'm like, oh my,
how did we miss the giant painting on the wall? No.
Yeah, right. I'm like, oh,
but it only makes sense in hindsight. Yeah.
That's what I tell myself.
Oh no, it's totally true.
So as far as the hints, right? Like, you know, I'm with you. I think Cyan is such a compelling character as far as like an intelligent AI, but also so sheltered and kind of scared and afraid. And talk about stranger danger. Like the first time something reaches out to it, it's like, yeah, I want to connect. It's like, I own you now. It's like, oh, that's a bad experience. That's not everybody's Cyan. Like that's one really bad thing. As far as Hephaestus is concerned, I kind of disqualified it from the contention because this ancient ghost, they talk about it being ancient. And Hephaestus is not the oldest AI that we would know of. Like Cyan is older than Hephaestus. It predates it. It was built in the clawback, which is the 2040s. And then, of course, because I put on my like tinfoil hat and the end is coming and Vast Silver is here, like I honestly thought that before we got this signal for Nemesis, I thought that Vast Silver, if the glitch and the extinction signal were connected, I thought Vast Silver was the only thing that could have happened, that could have made that happen.
Right.
But we're getting even more foreshadowing about Vast Silver than ever between the last data point in Burning Shores, the last data point in Forbidden West, the chat buddy GPT, which I lost my mind when I read. I ran upstairs and I was like, this is it. It's talking. This like all the things that I had been wanting to happen was all wrapped up in one data point. And I even tweeted at Annie Katane, the senior writer over there. I was like, Well played, Annie. Well played. And she gave me a thumbs up.
Nice. That's awesome.
By the way, also like the writers of the game they know they're so good at what they do, and the times I've been able to speak to them, and they've just been so awesome, and they love the franchise as much as anything else. So they knew that the people who were looking for it would just like lose their mind over it. So I think that, you know, as far as ancient AIs are concerned, as far as true AIs are, there is nothing older than Vast Silver. It was the first AI that allowed the humanity to realize that they had reached the singularity. It is the singularity. And the fact that the last mission of the game is called Singularity. So there's a lot of connection there. I'm hopeful. I would be incredibly disappointed if it was just a red herring through the whole thing, or just kind of a contextual piece to let people know where AI came from. They talked about that in a GaiaCast, like, why was AI not the leading form of science in order to reconstitute the world? Why was it robotics? It's because AI kind of had a hampered history, and it was purposely kept from advancing. Nanotech had the same thing happen to it. That's why it wasn't used. So that's why robotics, and then that's a great foil for why we're fighting robot dinosaurs. But they thought of it, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
So I think that I if I was a betting person, and even though it's maybe I'm manifesting it in the secret kind of way, I would love it to be Vast Silver, because as much as I thought it could be a villain, I always loved the idea of it being a misunderstood protagonist.
Yeah.
Because it's like, imagine being a consciousness that is the most advanced thing in possibly all of creation, and immediately everything is scared. Your own creators are so scared of you that they're trying to do something that makes you so fearful, because we learned that it was afraid from a data point in they have the same initials, Frozen Wilds,
Yep.
from Anita Sandoval, that talks about it being so afraid that it fled. That I feel that this is a misunderstood entity. And that Chat Buddy GPT really almost confirmed that for me, that all it really wanted was some kind of connection. You see it reaching out on chat boards. You see it just trying to interact with humanity in a way that is not this crazy omnipotent AI that's to destroy the world. Like, could it? Probably. But does it want to? I don't think so. And as far as entities that could exist from the 21st century to the 31st century, my money is on Vast Silver. Now, the one thing that I'm actually a little bit not perturbed, but confused. It mentions it rising in the east. Now, are you referring to that on a global scale as what we in the Western Hemisphere would refer to as the east? Or are we talking about geographically from where this data point's being read? So are we talking about like across the Great Ocean? Are we potentially seeing something in the Quen Empire? Or are we headed to the east coast of the United States? So that part I'm a little less concrete on. I said, just because we are introducing the Quen so much, and sea travel really opens the world to a much wider scale in the world of Horizon. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did venture into the Quen homeland in the third game, just because there hasn't been anything set up for the east coast of the United States, really. So for my money, long story short, I do think that we are talking about Vast Silver. I truly hope so. And I think the east that's being referred to is the Great Delta, the Quen homeland, where we're probably going to venture to in Horizon 3. That's what
It's going to be fun to look back on this data point when we know more and kind of piece together like, oh, this is what it meant. You know, that's always fun to do.
Kick myself again.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you though that Vast Silver is probably not just trying to kill everybody the way that Nemesis maybe is, right?
Right.
I think it's probably misunderstood. Now, remind me if you know this. Vast Silver had a certain Turing level, right, which is a measure of intelligence compared to humans that they decided was way too much.
Yeah.
And so when they put the sanctions on building advanced AI, they set like 0.8 or something as like the maximum Turing level that you could. Is Vast Silver's Turing, is Vast Silver more intelligent than Gaia? Do we know?
That's a really good question. So the Turing, so the MIE, which is the regulatory body established by the Turing Act, basically went around and said zero point 0.6 is the base level of sentience that they had to be beneath. And in certain data points in Forbidden West and Burning Shores, they talk about like gating that for artificial intelligence. And some people are like taking those gates out. They're like, you be the best AI you can be. And it's, I don't know, they're like little servitors. They're nothing major.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Turing score, the highest recording Turing score, I believe, and they talk about this in a Sobek journal when they're spinning up Gaia for the first time, that the highest recorded Turing level was like above 1. Which in my mind has to be Vast Silver. That's the benchmark. Eventually Gaia will spin up above that. But here's the catch. The Gaia that we're referring to in those is different to the Gaia than we have now. The Gaia that was originally created had roughly 1,000 years to continue to grow and learn and have its development continue, where the Gaia we have now is very much closer to the original version of Gaia, a Gaia kernel that is now beginning that same journey.
Right.
If Vast Silver has just been left out into the wild for even longer than that, because it was created, it predates Gaia by roughly 20 years. So, and if it's still operational, it's been evolving and learning. So I think it's possibly the most highly sentient entity, period. More than Gaia, more than Nemesis, because Nemesis is still fairly new.
Right.
And it's single-purposed. And
it's corrupt on some level. It's not...
Yes.
Wasn't really intended to be released yet.
Yeah, exactly. It was supposed to be scrapped until it just like festered long enough and it got angry and got out of there. Where Vast Silver has basically had 1,000 years to comb through the entire world and then some, wherever it wanted to go. And so for my money, it's the most advanced AI on the board. And even though it may have started that way, I think it is so different and so changed from its original iteration. It probably still has the capabilities. Like, I thought that this game was being set up for Vast Silver to be the antagonist. When you see like the storms happening and all of the biosphere crumbling, I'm like, Vast Silver is a climate intervention AI.
Yeah.
Like, this fits too well, but apparently it didn't. I'm like, everything is falling into place. Like, the climate stuff makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh man, I was wrong, and this is one that I kick myself about. I talked about it a little bit, and if you'll indulge me, like, the Hades protocol data point was the pinnacle of my focus for the entirety of Zero Dawn, because I'm like, there has to be something to this. This is an important data point because it outlines the relationship between Hades and Gaia.
Right.
And my whole thought process revolved around the fact that Hades is the only subfunction designed to unseat Gaia. So there's no way that Gaia has really any authority over Hades, because otherwise, if it did, it would never let it do its job.
Right.
So I thought the best way to basically trigger the end of the world again is to mess with the biosphere just enough to where Hades is like, we need a reset. And then Gaia's like, wait, no, you can't do that. And then detonates. So I thought that was like an elegant solution to, like, you're not going to hack Gaia. She's too smart. Right. But you could trigger, basically using the system the way it was intended to be used to then end the world again.
And you were thinking like Vast Silver was doing this in the background. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. It's like, you're not going to stop Gaia from doing her thing, but you can get something that's like her kill switch, essentially. Not the kill switch, but a kill switch to then unseat her and take care of it yourself.
Right.
Obviously, that didn't end up panning out. I still kind of wish that's how it worked. But for me, like, I think Vast Silver is probably on par, if not more powerful than Nemesis. And two, and the thing that I brought up in that video, if what we're being told is correct and the telemetry and the data points are accurate, Vast Silver was captured, which means it probably knows how. So it's the only entity in existence that knows how to capture an incredibly super intelligent, superhumanly intelligent AI. Is the only thing that knows how to do that.
We need to learn how to do that.
Yes, it's all the military tech and everything else, but that I think might be the linchpin to actually solving the Nemesis problem.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very plausible. I also just think it would be so cool if like Nemesis arrived on Earth and Vassilver was just like, delete. Like, just
Get off my lawn.
Get off the planet. You know, it's like way more powerful than Nemesis somehow. But
yeah,
then,
for sure.
But then it begs the question, like, and I also wonder this even despite that ridiculous theory, but Nemesis being the ultimate antagonist of the series seems too on the nose for the way that this story arc is written in general to me. And I don't really have a thought on how it would be different, but I just really am curious to see the way Horizon 3 plays out and the way the whole arc plays out. If Nemesis really is the final like boss, the final enemy, or if there's something that's going to come in and Nemesis is kind of like a red herring right now.
Yeah. You know, that was my one thing about that bothered me about Nemesis, was because not that I was wrong, but I felt like I couldn't be right because it happened off screen, essentially, right? We don't know what happens until we're given the information.
Right.
Zero Dawn purposely tells us to mislead us that the Odyssey failed. So we kind of put that away. And some people speculated, but even those people who speculated were speculating on the Zeniths or the descendants of the Zeniths trying to reclaim Earth. So even they weren't truly correct because, you know, I'm very happy that wasn't the case because that seems really mustache twirly villain stuff to me. It's like, yes, we want your planet now.
Yeah.
So I was happy that it wasn't Far Zenith that triggered the signal, so it made sense that it was something that wasn't human. But it did seem a little bit like, man, I wish there was some kind of through line here from the first game through the third game that had happened. So I would love for that to be the case, because that would really make a truly interconnected woven story, opposed to like your true adversary is only revealed in your second chapter, right? It's like if you're watching the first 3 Star Wars and you only get Darth Vader in the second one. He's not in the first one, right? So I think that for me, I would love some interconnectedness. I trust in their writing. They're really good writers. I don't want to, because every time I come up with something in my head that isn't involved with what I just talked about, I'm like, man, that seems cheap. Or are they just swerving? Are they trying to subvert expectations purely for the sake of subverting expectations? Like, I hope that's not the case, but I would love to be surprised is really what it is. I would love to be surprised by something from the very beginning that I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not see that? That's so clever and so good. That's what I want. So if they can, that means Nemesis being a red herring to make that happen, then I'm all for that. Because those are the storytelling moments that you live for, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, as much as I love Forbidden West, it's kind of like we mentioned earlier. Like, there's no doubt Zero Dawn's story is I think objectively better. Like, it's just, and it's this typical like first book in the series, first movie and second book type thing, right? Like, the first installment, you're learning how the world works, you're uncovering all this mystery, you're learning about the characters. It's just really compelling. And then the second game, the second movie, the second book, whatever, you know a lot about how things work. And so the bar is raised to like introduce a new level of mystery. And they've more or less said that publicly in interviews, that they knew Forbidden West was going to be a challenge narratively to come up with like, how do you top what we did in Forbidden West? Because it was so good. And overall, my hope is that they can do that with a third game and just give us some kind of crazy spin that was like, whoa, that's a whole nother level.
I want to feel like I want a fourth game and then I don't get it. Like that's you know, because those are the best stories where you want more. And you kind of touched on this a little bit. There are some things, if it leaves you wanting more in the best possible way, then that's what you want out of a story. Like, nothing bothers me more than when you have a fully encapsulated story that's so good by itself, and then they're like, we're gonna make Queen's Gambit 2. You're like, no, don't. Like, it's perfect. It's so good just in this little box. You don't need to, you know, make a cinematic universe out of everything, right? You can just like tell a really good story, and then you can tell other stories within that universe, right? You can explore different characters that you like, but you don't need to continue Aloy's story longer than it needs to because it has an arc. The first story was her discovering how the world works and kind of like what her true challenge to face is. And then the second game is, where does she actually fit in the world? She knows she has to save it, but where is her true part in this world? Because they talk about Elizabeth like wanting to save the world, but never letting anybody get close enough. You want to save people, but nobody ever knows you. So Aloy trying to be better in that way. So I appreciate what they did as far as like, we're never going to live up to the expectations of world building for Zero Dawn. Let's make this a very character driven story about Aloy. So I'm like, I appreciate that. The Xena thing was like, this is a big swing. I'm not sure. Like you do forget, like we talked about post-apocalypse, you do forget sometimes that Horizon is a sci-fi game.
Yeah.
Like it's so well hidden amongst like mythologies and tribal stuff that you're like, no, this is a sci-fi game.
Yeah.
And they really turned into that in Forbidden West. So I'm interested to see where they go in 3.
Yep. I am too. Have you seen a show called The 100?
I haven't.
Or the books. There's a book series.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Is it similar?
It's post-apocalyptic. But I was just going to use it as an example, like spoiler alerts if anybody hasn't seen this, or read the books, but in the show,
for me.
Yeah. They kind of do this thing that we're talking about where they just took it a little too far, I think. Right. They think they deviated from the books. I didn't read the books, but they basically like are existing on a planet and you uncover this really cool backstory of what's going on and how the apocalypse happened and all this stuff. And it's like, there was a point where they should have just put a bow on it and said, we're done. And they went like another 2 or 3 seasons. And it was kind of interesting, but it was also like, that was really weird, narratively. It was like this whole nother weird arc that started to happen. And I'm not saying Horizon's going that direction at all. It's just, I like you said, I want us to end on a bang. I want to be shocked and I want more. And then I want that more to come through like what we were talking about, like prequel games for Rost or comic books or whatever, other methods of getting into the Horizon universe without like prolonging Aloy's story beyond where it really should go.
Right. There are other stories to be told there. Like I'm a big Lord of the Rings person.
Yeah.
So you got the shards of Narsil over there. Nice. Thank God I married a nerd. Anyway, so but I'm enjoying what they're doing with like the Rings of Power. Like obviously nothing's ever going to trump Lord of the Rings as far as the films are concerned. Like a lot of like I read the books as well. Part of me feels like the movies are better than the books because they trimmed out all the weird like Tolkien stuff where you're like, Tom Bombadil is a very confusing character. You probably don't need to include him in your movies.
Right.
And so they took like the best parts of it and they made 3 masterpiece films. But it's not like they're like, okay, let's talk about what Aragorn's up to after the Lord of the Rings, or like, you don't really need that. So, but you have a whole world that you could pull on. You have this great story about like the Rings of Power and Celebrimbor and all these things that as like lore nerds, you're like, I want to see that brought to life. So there's so much you could do. You could do an entire mini series about Enduring Victory because that is such a compelling and tragic thing to talk about. And it's funny, every once in a while people like will comment to me. It doesn't happen too much, but they'll comment like, maybe you should like bring more excitement into your voice. I'm like, so much of Horizon's history is just sad.
Yeah,
it is sad and
it really
somber.
is.
So it's like, all right, in 2045, everybody died. You're like, there's a disconnect there. I don't know. I get what they're saying, but there are stories to be told both in the 21st century and in the 31st century that I think could be. You could make an entire series about the Red Raids. It'd be sad. It'd be hard, but you could do that.
Yep.
You could talk about individual storylines. Like I'd love a DLC where Ross just goes and hunts the 12 Outlanders. That's a game. You could make that a game. And I was talking with Noxious about it a little bit. It could be a totally different game style than Horizon. It doesn't have to be an open world game. It could be more of like a God of War style game.
Yeah.
That is a little bit more linear, but you have a purpose that you could continue to work towards. So I think, like you said, there are other stories to be told in this universe. Aloy does not have to be part of everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But she has become so embedded in like what a Horizon game is. Like that's something else going back to the multiplayer that I'm really interested to see. Because they pretty much definitively said like, it will be a new cast of characters, meaning Aloy will not be at least featured largely in a multiplayer game.
Right.
And so I'm really interested to see how they make a Horizon game feel like a Horizon game without Aloy.
I think they took a good step in that with Call of the Mountain.
Right.
Because I really did think his story was compelling. And talk about like a knowledgeable fan base. I put out my like trailer breakdown and analysis, and one of the comments was, "Did you not read this data point?" And then I read it, and then I instantly took it down, re-edited it, and then threw it back up because it was that important.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh man, you guys are on it. Luckily, it wasn't like, how could you miss this? It's like, did you check this out? It's like, oh, thanks, guys.
Right.
Because to have somebody's take that one has no idea what the larger picture is, and it's like, this is my life, I'm just trying to survive. I think those stories are interesting. But yeah, I thought they were mostly successful in that. And I think even though it was a pretty self-contained story, and you don't really obviously you don't see, oh my gosh, why am I just said
Rias?
his name, Intimate Shadow. Yeah, like his face or anything like that. But I think they did a good job of telling that story. So I think they could. People just need to. It's going to take some getting used to, because we are so used to viewing this world through Aloy's lens, both physically and mechanically, that it could be challenging. But if people give it a chance, I think hopefully they can come to know a wider cast of characters. But I really hope. Have you played Ghost of Tsushima?
Yep.
Yeah. The way that they handled their NPC characters, I thought was brilliant. Because so many RPGs, and Horizon does this too, because it's kind of the standard where you meet a ton of different NPCs,
Right.
and you might interact with them again, maybe.
Right.
Where Ghost was like, here's like 6 characters that you're going to see through this entire game, but you're going to be invested by the end in every single one of their storylines. And I was just so blown away by how well they did that. So
that was very cool.
If they were able to do something similar and take a cue off of that for not only the playable characters, but the NPC characters, I think that would be really remarkable.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Ghost would be a great model for that.
And I can't wait for the second game of that too.
Yeah. Yep.
Hopefully it doesn't come out at the same time as the third Horizon game.
Man. But we'll break the curse one of these days, hopefully. Yeah.
Yep. All right, man. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. We could talk about this stuff all the time. Arktix, I think that was an amazing chat. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the rest of the stuff coming out soon and talk to you about it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
For anybody who doesn't know about your awesome content, tell folks where to find you and what's coming up next.
Yeah, so it's Arktix Official on YouTube, or you can just search Arktix. I'm also Arktix Official on Twitter. On Discord, it's discord.gg/Arktix, and Instagram is Arktix Official as well. Yeah, happy to have people come check out the channel, and really excited to have been on this podcast with you. Thanks for inviting me. And it's really cool. I think I also want to just mention, like, we formed the Horizon Creators Guild.
Yeah.
So this was kind of this video and a video I recently did with Ahtano and ChazMatazz were collaborations that came out of a group of Horizon creators that are now kind of working together just to form collaborations like this and continue to build the Horizon community. So very cool. And I really appreciate you inviting me to have me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we'll include the links to all those other channels for the Horizon community that don't know about these awesome content creators, because I think the more that we can support each other and the more that we can get the word about all the great content that's being put out. If you like Horizon and you want to see more content about Horizon, check out these channels. A lot of them are wildly underrated. And yeah, it was an absolute pleasure having you on, and we'll have to have you on again soon. And look for all of those channels. I'll put them in the description. They are all very worthwhile and worth your time, and do a great job dealing with the game. But
definitely,
that's for now. And as always, thanks for watching. Keep questing, and we'll see you next time.